you. Hello, hello.
Okay, so we'll get started then.
I'll mute you for now because I hear a lot of noise, but you can unmute yourself if you want to talk. Okay?
Is it still echoing, ma'am? Is it fine now?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. So should we start, or are we still connecting?
Yeah, sure.
We can?
Yes, ma'am. The stream has started. So I'll request Arjun to introduce.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's start.
Yeah, okay. So welcome all to the fourth astrobiology talk conducted in the collaboration of Parsec and the Ecological Society of IISER-TVM. Today we have Julia Brodsky. She's a researcher at the Blue Marble Space Institute of Science. She is also the founder and CEO of Art of Enquiry, an educational startup, and an author. Julia Brodsky is an astrophysicist by training, who has trained several ISS astronauts and flight controllers. She was also a rocket scientist at NASA and helped out at NASA outreach centers. She's a recipient of the Silver Snoopy Award, presented by astronauts for outstanding performance, contributing to flight safety and mission success. We are extremely thrilled to have you aboard, ma'am. Over to you.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. So today we're going to have a very playful and light-hearted discussion, I hope, on astrobiology and us. And just to tell you a little bit more about me, you will see that all my biography involves science and education. I'm originally from Russia, where I was a student at the Magnet Math and Science program first with a specialization in science education. Then I got my degrees in space research. I worked as an ISS instructor. I'm a homeschooling parent of 3 kids, so I'm also interested in education from that perspective. Right, I taught at private schools. I write about education at Forbes. I run this online program for preteen kids called Art of Inquiry, and I work as a STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, education at Blue Marble Space Institute of Science. So you see my focus is science education, right, through all of this time. So when I was still a teenager, I talked to my physics teacher, a professor in my university, and I asked him, what is the main result of your scientific activity? And he told me, the main result of my scientific activity is myself. When I'm thinking, I'm actually changing my mind. I'm restructuring the way I'm thinking. I'm learning how to ask better questions, and I'm learning how to reflect on what I'm doing. And then when I asked him, what is your main scientific method? And he said, my main scientific method is cheerful readiness for mistakes. So I was always curious what helps us to make better science and what makes us better scientists and how to raise better scientists. But I'm also interested about how we're going to raise children in this new world that is happening right now. Because the world is changing very quickly, and we as a humanity have no experience with it whatsoever. All this genetic engineering, all the AI programs that is growing exponentially, all the dramatic ecological changes, all the new knowledge that we are getting, the planet that is changing rapidly. How can we prepare ourselves and our children to live in such a world? We have almost no intuition for such a world, right? So we cannot actually use our previous experience. And this is very similar to us coming, to a new world or going to a new planet and starting from the scratch. And maybe astrobiology as an emergent science that is actually concerned with new worlds may be a help and maybe the basis for the new education. So this is where my interest is. And I'm going to talk to you about some of the questions we're actually discussing with children and adults alike. So how would you start? How would you prepare a person to live in this ever-changing and completely unpredictable world that we as a humanity have no experience with? You can answer in chat if you have some ideas or suggestions. I will see the chat. What would be the main thing for you? Where should we start? Maybe some concepts, some habits of mind, maybe something else. What would be the most essential thing for us to live, to survive, to enjoy living in this changing and unpredictable world? For you as a scientist and for you as a person. And what would be the starting point?
I think we should probably get exposed to problem solving quite early on, rather than like theoretical studies. That is also important, but that could happen later on probably. But yeah, problem solving is really important, I think.
Problem solving, all types of problem solving. What kind of practical knowledge, Michelle and Arun, what kind of problem solving? Where does the problem solving actually start?
It could start at a pretty young age, according to me. They could probably start inculcating vocational training and short internships, if possible, in school level itself. It's pretty hard, but I think they should do that.
But you're already talking about doing something, right? What is the step prior to that? What would be your motivation for problem solving? Where does all the science start?
I think it should start from a very young age, like as early as possible.
Not the age, but from what root? What would be the starting point for this science? That's right. And from there, yes, we can definitely do problem solving, but we need to start with a question, right? This is a bedrock for science, absolutely. So, but do we actually practice questioning? Do we actually do that as children? We start as children, right? But we are very quickly suppressed. Don't ask these type of questions, don't ask this type of questions. But questioning is exactly what we need if we want to learn about the new world. There is no other way around it, right? So, questions and reflection. Freeman Dyson, and you probably know him, right? The Dyson sphere. Most of you who are doing astrobiology have heard of that. Right, Naveen, I agree, yes. So Freeman Dyson said the public has a distorted view of science because children are taught in school that science is a collection of firmly established truths. In fact, science is not a collection of truths. It's a continuing exploration of mysteries. Right? So let's do some exploration of mysteries today, and we'll see what children are doing when asked to do the same thing. We're going to play right now. This is called the question formulation technique. Harvard really loves it, especially when they're using it with their undergrad students. And this is how you do it. You focus on the topic. I will give you a topic in the next slide. I cannot do as many questions as you can because we are limited in time, of course, here. I'll just ask you to ask like 3 to 5 questions. And do not stop to discuss, to judge, to answer the questions. Any silly questions are fine, right? And also try to focus on open-ended questions. And don't forget one of the most important questions for astrobiology research that starts with what if? Okay, so I'm going to go here. I can actually give you a link to a Google form. Let's do that. Just a second. I'll give you a form link and you can put your questions there. This will be a bit easier maybe for us to see the responses. So here we are. I'm going to. So in the next few minutes, just ask whatever questions come to your mind. This way, you are the only one who's seeing your own questions, so you don't distract each other.
Okay, so we just use the forms to put all of our questions in?
Whatever question, yeah, yes, let's say up to 5 questions, right? I think I made all 5 required, maybe I just made all 5 required. So ask whatever 5 questions about space civilization come to your mind. Just think anonymous. I have no idea who is who. We're just collecting the most interesting questions that you will want to ask. Or whatever comes to your mind. Silly questions are fine too. Funny questions are fine as well.
Okay, sure.
So you start with asking questions. Analyzing the questions is a completely different step. Let me just give you a couple of minutes. I think you will be done in a couple of minutes. And of course, different people put very different meaning in space and civilization, space civilization. That's okay. Done? Not yet? Not yet.
Yes, ma'am, I'm done.
Maybe 1 more minute, okay? And, you know.
Yeah, sure.
So for those of you who are done, try to analyze your questions now, like which ones are eye-opening for yourself? Which ones you haven't expect from yourself? Which ones are the most important to you? Which ones may help with your research? Which ones may guide your reading and writing, right? While you're waiting. Whether you can unpack your question to see more questions packed within one question. Okay, so let's now take a look at the questions asked by preteens. And you feel free to compare your questions with theirs. And we will also try to unpack their questions. Would they play Monopoly with me? For those of you who know what Monopoly is, it's a board game, right? It seems like a very funny question, but what I do, I actually teach the kids to unpack them. You can turn it into an amazing set on deep scientific questions. Because when you ask this question, it means that those extraterrestrials understand the rules, are able to understand the rules, are able to see the cards. So they see in the same light spectrum that you are. They process the information on the same time scale. They have the same information processing speed, more or less. They are not bored. Right? They can stand here. Right? And so on. They know how to count. They can move the cards. They have some limbs and so on. Right? How do they communicate? That first question is a great introduction to the second question. Because while we communicate with language, with signals, with gestures, with writing, some animals can communicate, for example, with electric signals or receive signals, like platypus is electroreceptive, right? There may be some other ways. Do they see what we see? This is a great question. Right? Do they taste well? Again, it's a very funny question. You don't really want to eat extraterrestrials, but you can unpack it as in multicellular organisms, as they made out of something that, you know, is edible for our organism. Could we process that? Is it organic? Right? Do they think differently? Is there the lowest limit of energy for life and civilization to exist? Can whole planets be alive? Can fungal networks become intelligent? And this is a big question, right? If we know that AI networks may become intelligent, why not fungal networks, right? How do we search for AI civilizations? I personally have no idea. I don't understand how to search for biological civilizations, more or less. But AI civilizations can survive in space. They may survive on planets that are absolutely unsuitable for life, right? They may survive in interstellar space and so on. Do all intelligent species have some sort of ethics? This is a great question if we want to establish some type of contact with them, right? Could they live in different dimensions? Do they have memes? Do they have viruses? Again, extremely important if we want to establish some contact, right? Do they share their planet with other living things? So do we have something in common with them on this level, right? Will we be able to detect underground civilizations? I don't know how we can do it at this moment, right? Are they able to enjoy their life? Are emotions universal? Are there any ghost space civilizations? Do they live on the same time scale as us? Can we merge with them? And what do we actually have in common? I will return to this question later. So we can actually take these questions asked by kids, these are 10 to 13-year-old kids, and write a dissertation on each of those, right? So, but you need to start with the question. This is absolutely essential. So let me ask you this. All of you know about the Golden Record and Voyager 1 and 2, right?
Yes.
So those were the probes that were sent outside of the solar system. They just moved into the outside of the solar system, right? They just crossed the border of the heliosphere. Those Voyagers, and they were sent out in 1970s. They carry a golden disk. Our message to extraterrestrials: the smartest scientists were involved in crafting those disks and those messages. We're going to play with it now. Now, without Googling, and you're not an extraterrestrial, you're a human being living on this planet, just 50 years after it was done. Could you please tell me what's written there? Do you have any idea what this thing talks about? So the smartest scientists thought that those extraterrestrials living in other worlds will be able to decipher this. Make a guess and don't Google it. And try to see what kind of background knowledge you need to decipher this, and what kind of abilities and technologies you need to decipher this. This is one of our first attempts after the 5 years to actually send a message to extraterrestrials.
If any of the other participants have any suggestions, you could put it up in the chat box or unmute and talk.
Yes, yes. Please share your ideas in chat. All wild guesses are welcome. I share this with kids, and they have all types of ideas. So feel free, imagine that you're a child who just got this message from another planet, and you're trying to figure out what is it talking about? What should I do with this thing?
This is much harder than I thought.
You know, they were supposed to figure it out without knowing anything about our planet, about our values, about our size. Actually says the waveform could be something laughing. Maybe. I have no idea how extraterrestrials are laughing. So who knows?
The sparks might represent the Big Bang, maybe.
To represent what, sorry?
The sparks at the bottom might represent the Big Bang, probably.
Big Bang. Oh, you know what? They actually represent pulsars. So, but I have no idea how Big Bang looked like, honestly. And I don't know whether extraterrestrials have any concept of a Big Bang. They may have a completely different theory about how the universe started, or they may not care at all.
Yeah, that's true.
So poor extraterrestrial scientists, this will be a huge puzzle for them, even if us, college-educated people are having trouble guessing what those people 50 years ago tried to say here. Well, let me give you an easier task. We will actually look at the images that are sent there. So I'm going to share with you the images. And I want to ask you, do you see any problem with those images? Let me share this in just a second. So, I'll share you like this one, for example. What's going on here? You're an extraterrestrial. Tell me. Try to interpret this one.
Okay, this probably looks like hunter and prey.
Well, we know that, yes, right? But that it's hunting. We know that. But do they know that? Can it be like the way I'm painting on the wall? Can it be a doctor trying to give a shot to an animal? Can it be a robot that looks like a deer? And by the way, extraterrestrials have no idea what it is. So you are trying to control it remotely. Can it be a device to take a picture of a deer, like a camera? Yes? It may be, absolutely, but only if you're orbiting, say, just one sun. What if you are orbiting two suns? You probably will have several shadows and maybe different colors, right? But yes, I guess shadow is some, again, if they can see it all, right? So let me close this one and let's go, let's say here. What's going on here? What are these people? Why are they running? Are they chasing someone? Are they running away from someone? What's going on? And why should we know about it as extraterrestrials, right? Or this woman, is she connected to this strange device? Is it a mind-reading device? Is she a cyborg? Is she taking her temperature? Is it a medical device to help her? And what's on her ear? Is it an insect crawling there? Is it another sort of device? And again, we're assuming that those extraterrestrials can see that. This is my favorite one. They don't even have the size here. What could that be? Well, your suggestions. So, see, I'm an extraterrestrial trying to guess.
It's probably just a code of some sort. I mean, they wouldn't know it's music per se, but just some code. But
some code, yes. Yeah. To do what? What is this strange thing about?
Might look like a weapon to them. weapon or some sort of,
right?
yeah.
Maybe a weapon with a code how to initiate that weapon, right? How to start it. What else could it be?
Yes.
How about cooking? May it be a cookie and a recipe? How to make this cookie? Why not? Right?
Yep, it could be that too.
And by the way, we have no idea how big this thing or how small it is. Maybe it's extremely small. Maybe it's huge. Maybe it's just one of a kind that exists on Earth, and we just put it in the museum because it's something that happened naturally. By the way, so let's go back to the pictures. The first thing that teenagers notice when they look through the pictures, there are no computers. There are no laptops. There are no smartphones. Oh, there is one other very funny picture there. This one. What's going on here? And we actually don't drink this most of the time. So is this person taking a bath? You know what's going on? Some type of a ritual washing. Are you teething? And so you're trying to sharpen your teeth? Now, what's going on here? So it's extremely difficult to understand. But, you know, some of the smartest people got together and chose those images. And as you see, it's extremely human-centered and human-biased. You don't see that many pictures of animals. You see just a few pictures of Earth and so on, right? Mostly human technology artifacts that are outdated already, many of them. So, what kind of images would you choose? What would be the most essential, most important to you if you were doing the same thing right now? By the way, there is a project by Breakthrough Initiative that is actually focused on that. You could get $1 million by crafting a good message.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the name once again?
Breakthrough Initiative. Breakthrough Initiative.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you probably heard of that. If not, I have a link later on another slide. I'll show you.
Yeah.
So, what kind of images would you choose? Why would you choose them? What is essential for you? What is essential for extraterrestrials? So we're dealing with a complete unknown. So the only, sorry?
Sorry, that was yeah. I'm sorry, that was background noise. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So what should we do? Our only way is to start with questions. If we don't have any answers, we should start with questions and then start taking them apart. By the way, if you have any ideas of what kind of images you want to share, please share in chat. Okay? Feel free to share. So, and while you're thinking about those images, you know, we have no idea about how extraterrestrials perceive the world. A picture of the Earth and the Sun would be good, yes. The only problem is, would they actually see it the same way as you do? So here I have 3 examples of different eyes. I have spider eyes, dragonfly eyes, and crab eyes. We have so many different creatures here on Earth that see very differently from us. Hawks, those hunting birds, they have a much more acute, sharper vision than we do. They can see much further away than we do. Lots of birds see in ultraviolet light. Snakes see in infrared light. Our vision is extremely limited, and quite possible that those extraterrestrials will see in a completely different slice of the electromagnetic spectrum, right? Same with the sound. The dogs hear the sounds that we cannot hear. That's why we have dog whistles, right? Teenagers, by the way, also can hear the sounds that adults cannot hear. Kids and teenagers. So little moths can hear at very high frequencies. Bats hear at completely different frequencies and process the sound differently from us. Bats and dolphins, they're more or less seeing in sound, not hearing in sound. They process it differently. There are lots of fish that can actually receive and process the electric signals, and some types of animals that can actually produce electric signals and can communicate through electric signals. Octopuses communicate through changing the color of their skin, and so on. So we're sending those pictures, but with it is the probabilities that they will see the same things that we are seeing is like negligibly small. So they will probably see, if we are lucky, they will see half of the picture, and then they will see something else that we don't even see on the same image. Like, how do you communicate in such situation? Because they may have evolved in completely different planetary conditions, right? And imagine that your golden record lands on a planet which is a water world. And all the living things there live underwater. First of all, rotating it to the same speed that you need to produce those images and those signals will be quite problematic, right? But also, they will perceive the way completely differently. So you may try to think, how would the planetary conditions affect the evolution of the species that develop underground? We have lots of species on our own planet that live underground, so it's quite possible. Especially if the conditions on the surface are not favorable, if it is toxic, if you don't have a magnetosphere that will be protecting you, if you are way too close or way too far away from your sun, and so on. Right? You can still live underground, you can still live underwater. Again, the current theory is that the life on Earth started near the hydrothermal vents on the seafloor, right? Underwater. How would those creatures perceive the world if they live in very cold worlds? Maybe their metabolism is very slow. So the images that not the images, the sounds, those musics and songs that we're singing them, they will process them completely differently. And so, right? So even if we find this type of civilizations, no, that's going to be lots of problems. So, and by the way, we don't even know when we are talking about it, how they will receive it. Because this is a quote from the movie Matrix, right? We think about ourselves very highly, but other creatures may see us on a completely different level. So the Agent Smith, the character from the movie, says, every mammal on this planet instinctively develops a natural equilibrium with the surrounding environment, but you humans do not. You move to an area and you multiply and multiply until every natural resource is consumed. And the only way you can survive is to spread to another area. There is another organism on this planet that follows the same pattern. Do you know what it is? A virus. Human beings are ATCs. How do we make sure that extraterrestrials do not see us as a disease? And by the way, maybe that is one of the reasons nobody is contacting us yet. We don't know how we can be perceived by another civilization. So now, when we're talking about those images, it's not just the technical part that we don't know how to do this. How to make an image that can be seen in different parts of light spectrum and so on. The biggest problem is that we don't really understand who we are. So imagine that you need to explain to an extraterrestrial who never saw a human in their life what a human is. So in chat, could you please share, like, what would matter for you the most in such a conversation? What is the most important thing of being a human as we are trying to explain it to another creature? I think it is. And, ask yourself. So possessing a set of limbs. So possessing a set of limbs, again, 2 sets of limbs. Now, let me ask you this. Let's say you lost a leg in an accident. Does it make you less human? So probably not. Probably that's not the most essential thing of being a human being, right? Curiosity, thinking, intelligence, emotions. Well, lots of the dogs that I know are pretty curious, pretty intelligent, and definitely have emotions. Same about dogs, and I mean dolphins, right? And lots of other living creatures. Self-consciousness is a good one. We do know that dolphins are self-conscious as well. For example, lots of apes are self-conscious on a lower level maybe than us, but they are. Exactly. We also need to define what consciousness is. That's kind of being self-aware, right? Knowing that it's me and so on. But all living organisms on some level have some level of consciousness, right? Not all of them maybe, but many complex organisms. So can we describe ourselves as creatures who may give a response when they want and when they don't want? Will it be the defining criteria? What about robots and AI? So you say that we are intelligent. So you say that it defines us as humans, that we can build rockets or go to space, meaning that when we were not able to build rockets, we were not humans. Or if we lose this ability for some reason, for example, for our own stupidity, creating too much space junk around the planet, so we trap ourselves on the planet and cannot move from the planet. We are not humans anymore. Yes? Okay. But then you're a virus again, then you're not a human, right? We're trying to define a human as a human.
Maybe one that doesn't have a proper definition could be considered as a human.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I like that one. You see, it is extremely difficult. And until we decide who we are, it will be very difficult to communicate it to another species, intelligent species, right? That's why astrobiology actually helps us. Even before we start communicating with extraterrestrials, it helps us to reflect on ourselves from a different perspective, from this alien perspective, and see ourselves in a different light. Provide us with a little bit more understanding of ourselves and of understanding where we don't know much about ourselves. By the way, this is what a 13-year-old student told me. Should we define a human being as a creature that is willing and able to change itself? How do you like this one?
But aren't there certain animals which also show some characteristics which are similar to this?
Probably. But
this is
loved
a pretty good definition.
I loved the way, I loved his attempt. Yes. So maybe one of the defining features of us is that we actually learn fast and we can adapt ourselves and we can adapt the world around ourselves faster than other creatures. But again, it's not like an exact definition, right? There is some gray area between us and the other animals. Okay, so again, when we're talking about establishing common language, sending messages to extraterrestrials, we probably should start with what do we actually have in common, okay? Not those strange boxes with circles that we've inscribed on that golden record, which can mean whatever you want it to mean. But what are some basic things that we hopefully share with them despite their difficulties, with seeing in the same light spectrum as we are, tasting the same, hearing the same thing, and so on. We're sharing the same universe, right? So hopefully the basic laws of physics will stand. They can interpret them differently, they can formulate them differently. But if they're working the same way, this is something we should be able to start with. Another feature is evolution and adaptation. Evolution is just a way of adaptation, right? We start with evolution, we evolve to adapt to the changing environment, and the universe is always changing. The universe doesn't stay still. It's expanding, the stars are burning, exploding, igniting, planets are changing through their life, and so on. So the life has to adapt all the time. So the idea of change, the idea of evolution, the idea of adaptation should be universal to all the living creatures in the universe. Is consciousness universal? This is a great question. Again, we don't even know what it is. We've just mentioned that, right? But this may be something that we may think about. How does consciousness emerge? What are the laws of consciousness? And so, what would be some other suggestions that you have? What do we have in common with extraterrestrials?
I think math is a pretty universal language and is probably complete without any physical meaning in general. So yeah, math is a very common thing which the universe shares.
So we definitely tend to think that mathematics is universal. There are some anthropological studies that say that there are some tribes living on our own planet that get around without using mathematics. So it's not universal even for human beings. Even though it's very difficult to describe physical laws without math. Assume something. Yes, definitely energy. Yes, energy should be universal, for sure. Mm-hmm. What else?
The ability to grasp information and to process the information in any way or form. So some kind of information, like information in any kind, can be grasped by the ETs.
Absolutely, yes. So some type of learning, some type of information processing. But that again goes back to adaptation in some way, right? Because what is learning? This is actually adaptation for elucidation. That's why you use learning. That's why we're able to learn, right? But again, that information processing and energy usage is a great step to AI type of civilizations, right? They don't have to be biological. So, oh, by the way, I promised to share the link before I move on. This is the link to breakthrough message initiative. I'll show you. Groups can work together to produce a message for extraterrestrials, and they even have this prize for people who design something useful. So, just for fun of it. So, I don't know whether they will ever say that your message is right. So, this is something for you to think about. I still have 5 minutes, so I'll move on. But you may play with it after the lecture. Like, what will you send to extraterrestrials? In what format? Where? How will you ensure that your message is understood? What should you take into account? So, and this is another thing that I wanted to mention in the next 5 minutes, that we are about to start sharing the planet with non-human mind. Right now, we don't even have to go anywhere. The artificial intelligence is growing very fast. And this is another area where astrobiology can come. That's what happens. We think that it moves slowly, but it actually goes extremely fast. When I was 15 years old, I was reading a sci-fi book, and it had a line, the pilot of the space station appeared on the screen of the video phone, and I thought, wow, this is a complete sci-fi. 10 years later, I was sitting at Johnson Space Center, talking to the pilot of the International Space Station through the video phone. 10 years. So lots of things that we think are fairy tales right now may become truths in the next 10, 20 years. And I'm not really sure we're ready for it, right? Because already we can see with our tongues. Blind people can see with their tongues. We can control remote robotic arms by thinking. And not just us, monkeys can do it too. We can talk to a chatbot that cares about our mental health and mood, that is specifically trained to do so. My friend at Blue Marble, Anna Maria Berea, is using the natural language processing to study the stars. We can already decipher some dreams using an MRI machine. If you're in the MRI machine, people can see what you're dreaming. We can take pictures of our great-grandparents, put them into this AI software, upload them, and they will start moving and frowning at you and smiling at you. You can change, you can make one person look like another person. You can ask an AI for a medical advice. And we're just starting, right? So, and we're talking about emergence. And astrobiologists do know what emergence is, right? Emergence is when you take lots of little things, they start interacting, and something completely different emerges that functions on a completely different level. You take, one water molecule is not wet. You take lots of water molecules, you get water that can flow, that can turn into ice, that can turn into vapor, and so on. You take one cell, and then those cells get together, and you get a multicellular organism that can move around, and so on. You get one neuron like in a jellyfish. And then you get many neurons. You get a microbrain organelle that can start dreaming without even being connected to any limbs or sensors or eyes or ears and so on. More neurons, and you get a human being who can think about all these things, right? What happens if you take lots of AI agents and put them together? And they can interact. And they can connect. And they have no limit on how many you can have and what type of interactions you can have. What is going to emerge? We don't know. But we are living through it, right? And this is maybe where the knowledge of emergence, the readiness for emergence may become handy, but also the idea of establishing a contact with a non-human mind. Astrobiologists are some of the first people who actually started to think about it. And maybe soon we would have to actually put it to use, right? This is not what we're going to do right now, but this would be your question focus if you want to do it after the lecture. How do we think about the contact and coexistence with a non-human artificial mind? Okay, so I guess this was the time, right? So that's it for today.
Yes, ma'am. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to interact with us. I really enjoyed the talk. It was really interesting to think about the golden record, especially by the Voyagers. That was the best part. So yeah, thank you so much once again.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye. Bye. And have a good evening. I think it's evening on your side, right?
Yes.
Good night. Thank you.